Ready when you are.
All right, we're up.
We're going to call the meeting to order. The roll call, Paul.
Councilmember Thomas, Chair, is present.
Present.
Councilmember Moreno. Councilmember Morel.
Here.
Councilmember Harris. Councilmember King.
Here.
We have 3 members. We have a quorum.
So we're going to officially call to all the criminal, I'll say it again, the Criminal Justice Committee meeting agenda for Tuesday, February the 8th at 10 a.m. We have an agenda. The purpose of this meeting is, rightfully so, we've focused on the criminal justice side that deals with some of the violence and crime that goes on in the street. But the community has also had an outcry call for some balance, those issues. What happens with our young people? What are we doing in terms of how we police? How do we begin to program, get our ministers, get other agencies involved that aren't necessarily part of the criminal justice system, but determine the outcome of what happens with and within the criminal justice system. So the purpose of this meeting is to do that. I move for approval of the minutes of the January 26th, 2022 meeting. So move.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Morel. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Ayes have it. So ordered. Number 3 is a presentation by Brother Hakim Kashif. Discussion about how Thrive contributes to creating a better community and how their program can assist in reducing crime while providing opportunities for youth. Brother Hakim, before you start your presentation, first I want to thank you from the article that featured you in the USA Today several years ago to the work you and I have done with intervention, and not only for young folk, but for ex-offenders. You've made a drastic difference in the lives of many of the young people you touch. I know also the few times we visited the Juvenile Justice Center and talked to the kids there, it was always interesting how they responded and how open they were about the conversations about, even though they were in that facility, what they hoped and wanted to see in our community. So Brother Kashif, I'm going to turn this presentation over to you. Brother Hakim Kashif. We can't hear you. Unmute. Unmute. You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
I'm
you
sorry.
can.
Yes. Good morning, Councilman Thomas, as well as Councilman at Large, JP Morel, Ms. Moreno, as well as the other great council persons that are on with us this morning on the Zoom.
Well, before you start out, Councilman Moreno can't be with us. Her husband is having surgery, so our prayers go out to Councilman Moreno's husband, Chris, and hope that he has a successful surgery. If not, she would be with us. I'm sorry, Mr. Kashif, I just wanted to announce that.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So first and foremost, give you a proper introduction of myself. My name is Hakim Kashif. I'm a New Orleanian. I grew up in the 9th Ward, lower 9th Ward, as well as the Design Housing Development area. I'm a graduate of St. Augustine High School in New Orleans. I'm also a graduate of Southern University in New Orleans. I have a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice with a focus in psychology. And with the next educational goal in mind is to be in law school this fall of 2022. So I just wanted to sit in. Also, I'm a formerly incarcerated, did almost 17 years in federal prison. And I just want to thank you, Councilman Thomas, for always extending, that arm of gratitude to me. So I want to talk about Thrive first before I talk about building life skills in the classroom, which is 2 different separate entities, but they combine into one. And so Thrive New Orleans' mission is to empower people with an holistic network of resources and relationships as they work to change their lives, families, and communities. Thrive New Orleans was launched in 2008, to address local community development needs. Our programs include youth and community programming, workforce development, small business development, and affordable housing. Our youth and community program pillar has been served in the desired floor of the neighborhood since 2008. In 2014, we launched our local business restoration drive store, which provided jobs for the community, excellent affordable shopping experience and revenue mainstream for other services provided by Thrive New Orleans. In November 2021, restoration threat morphed into a resource distribution and disaster pillar at Thrive. Shortly after the restoration Thrive store opened, we started our business academy, which began to empower entrepreneurs for under-resourced communities with business training and coaching and mentoring to attain self-sufficiency. Since 2018, our workforce development program has focused on training unemployed, unemployed, and formerly incarcerated residents for high growth, high demand jobs. We create pathways to meaningful employment by equipping residents with in-demand skills and connecting them to stable, well-paying job opportunities. And so this is like a talking point about Thrive, but also we have a life skills program. And the age group, the age that we target the most is from 18, and there's no cap, no cutoff at the age. And so we have our first cohort graduation this evening at 7 o'clock, which would 15 young people will be graduating. So that is a great success of the work that we're doing at Thrive. And thank you for mentioning Thrive, Councilman Thomas. But if I may, I want to talk about some solutions I think that, you know, we can galvanize and unite around. And I don't want to sound as though I'm the guru or the expert about what's really going on with our young people. But I think that in the discussion, I can add some strategic approaches to how we should be able to curtail some of the youth violence that we're seeing throughout our city. And so what I developed something called building life skills in the classroom is a best practice approach to curtailing behavior challenges and youth violence. And I sent a copy to you, Councilman Thomas. And if you may, can they pull it up for me, please, if possible? Councilman Thomas.
Pull it up right now. Pardon me.
Yeah, please pull up the presentation.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. And so building the purpose and the reason why I was set out to do this is because when I was working for Ceasefire in New Orleans, and then it became Pure Violence, and then it was the Office of Gun Violence Reduction. But when I began this work in the schools, when I was at Ceasefire, I recognized in that model there was something missing in the school system that we can attach to the model. And I came up with something that was centered around life skills in the classroom under the guise of a peer support group. So building life skills in the classroom signifies redesigning how teachers and students think. And what I recognized when I would go into the schools and we begin to have peer support groups and work with young men that are adjudicated, wearing ankle braces, where they've been in the system before, those individuals that had challenges and behaviors, those individuals that the school had identified to had high detention rates, suspension and expulsion rates from different schools. And so I realized that if you begin to change the thinking of those students who had these challenges, you have to change the thinking of the teachers that serve the students, because you can't change one side and then leave the other side like that. And so I recognized that it had to be a component for life skills for teachers or life skills for professionals in the school system. And so the strategic approach was designed to provide services of positive behavior intervention support, traditional and non-traditional schools to reduce detention, suspension, and expulsion rates in high-risk students by improving their behavior and their rate over time. The method of building life skills in the classroom utilizes a peer support group. We aim to redefine what success looks like among students, particularly who are attracted to criminogenic behavior, which entails youth violence, carjacking, etc. Building life skills in the classroom is a value-based program that intervenes in a student's lives in a meaningful way. And then in the introduction, I talked about the 7 decades, cognitive behavior theories and interventions being introduced, research, and applied in various human service fields under the guise of a peer support group. And what I mean by peer support group, we see them in Narcotics Anonymous, we see them in, Alcohol Anonymous, we see them with the Cancer Association, other areas of different program, whether it be medical or social. Everyone uses a model of a peer support group, but mine was just a little different. A clear body of evidence has emerged to show that peer-led support groups positively impact individual lives, helping to create change in both thinking and behavior. School administrators and teachers have a challenging task of keeping schools safe and maintaining a positive learning environment. And at this time, when I was doing this body of work, putting it together, this research that I put in there, it may be a little off with the percentage, and I will up to date that if I have to. So currently the schools in Orleans Parish have a 26% out of school suspension rate, which is almost triple the state average. Research has shown that students with a history of suspensions or other disciplinary actions are more likely to be held back a grade, drop out, or become arrested or incarcerated in their lifetime. Close to 50% of youth in Louisiana secure facilities are incarcerated for nonviolent offenses, and 37% of youth in custody are diagnosed as severely mentally ill. And I attached where the research came from, so you can go and pull it up at another time when you get a chance. These statistics illustrate the need for a positive behavior intervention strategy in schools to help improve behavior and decrease discipline action. A critical component that is missing in schools is a culturally specific cognitive restructuring curriculum that can intervene into a student's antisocial and subsequent behavior. And this is the overview. The overview is a fundamental idea, behind building life skills in the classroom is deeply rooted in the transformation of the thinking of students, which has been identified as being at risk. As an experienced, life coach with years of executing cognitive behavior therapy, I developed new strategies to effectively target these specific individuals. Cognitive behavior therapy is a therapy that is focused on thinking and behavior and is shown to be effective treatment for antisocial behavior. Building life skills in the classroom is guided by a peer support group behavior change model that it uses a combination of approaches to increase students' awareness of themselves and others. The programs begin by teaching students an introspective process for examining their ways of thinking and feeling, beliefs, and attitudes. The key element of this model includes a facilitator with a background like that of students to foster more reliable interactions. What are peer support groups? Building life skills in the classroom created from the development of facilitating peer support. Peer support groups occur when people provide knowledge, experience, emotional, social, practical help to each other. Peer support is distinct from other forms of social support in that the source of support is a peer, a person who is similar in fundamental ways to the recipient of the support. Their relationship is one of equality. A peer can offer support by virtue of relevant experience. He or she has been there and done that and can relate to others who are now in a similar situation. In a peer support group, participants can talk with other participants who are like themselves, who truly understand what they're going through and can share the type of practical insights that can only come from firsthand experience. Some of the common characteristics of peer support groups include they are made of peers. People are directly affected by a particular issue or circumstance. They have a peer-led facilitator. Peer support groups empower people to work to solve their own problems. Among people who are experiencing similar problems, there are unique emotional identification that is different from the type of support that can be gotten from professionals. Group members act as role models for each other. Seeing others who are contending with the same adversity and making progress in their lives is inspiring and encouraging. A peer support group is a safe place for someone who needs to talk about intensely personal issues.
We need to move the presentation to the next page. Paul, if we could get to the next page.
Yes. Thank you, Councilman Thomas.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Kashif.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. No problem. A peer support group is a safe place for someone who needs to talk about intensely personal issues, experiences, struggles, and thoughts. In a peer support group, members are equals. This can make people feel more comfortable opening about their problem. The concept of the life skills training camp model. Now, this is something that I was able to work with, at a protracted period of time with different young people to sit in New Orleans, whether in the schools, where when I was at Ceasefire and Cure Violence, because I was, one of the first ones to introduce this strategy to schools as well as to where my former employer was. And there was a lot of pushback from it because, this is not like a cookie approach. And this is something foreign to many when you're really not, familiar with group settings and how groups are led. And also I went through a training called Moral Recombination Therapy where I was certified, and I met with the founder of that organization. And their model is introduced throughout Department of Corrections in America, as well as some federal Bureau of Prisons. And so when I met with Dr. White, I told him about the ideal of peer support groups. And he told me that if you could get that in the city of New Orleans, you can curtail a lot of criminogenic behavior that is seen and found in young people, not just in your city, all over. And this was like 7 years ago, Councilman. So the concept of life skills training camp model derived out of that. So the three core concepts of life skills training camp are self-imposed limitation, internal, external locus of control, and moral reasoning. These core concepts will always be reinforced through group sessions. Self-imposed limitations are the limitations that stop us from being the person we were born to be. In fact, the most severe and crippling limitations in our lives come from within. These limitations generally have a negative impact on our thoughts, values, and influence our actions. Number two, internal, external locus of control implies a person, locus, which is Latin for a place or location. It conceptualized as either internal, the person believes they can control their life, or external, the person believes their decision in life are controlled by environmental factors, which they cannot influence or change. Number three, moral reasoning is the process in which an individual tries to determine what is right and what is wrong in a personal situation by using intellect rather than emotions. Moral reason leads to moral character that will bring about self-analysis, self-examination, and self-correction, which is the apex of self-improvement, the basis for community development. And I gave a snippet of a model of how it looked. And then the implementation part is very critical, because if I could just pull that up and how, the implementation for me, it's always done in a circle, even at Thrive, even at Green Co, wherever I was able to facilitate, this particular model and using life skills, I always put all the students or participants in a group or in a circle of chairs. And the reason why we would do that is because so everybody can feel equal. No one is out of place, because a lot of times in the past, when I go into schools, young people from the ninth ward would be sitting in one section at this particular school. Then you got some of the young brothers maybe from another particular area of New Orleans sitting in another part in the same group. And so I had to really come up with a way to resolve that matter. And so I began to see that if we put everybody in the group, in the chairs, and then we can see each other, and then we can begin to develop proper relationship and social interaction with one another. So let me just deal with the implementation. To illustrate the effectiveness of this model, we begin the implementation of this strategy in one of the charter schools, if possible, that is experiencing high levels of at-risk or high-risk behaviors in youth that have been adjudicated or in the course to become adjudicated. The model includes a group of students that has been identified by the school officials that have exemplified behavior challenges of high rates of detention, suspensions, or previous histories of incarceration. That is very important, Councilman Toma, because every school in our city can identify with our young men, and in some instances, some young ladies, but most importantly, young men who have demonstrated behavior challenges. This is very important. If this is preventative, what Brother Hakim is talking about, because when you are involved in the criminal justice system on whatever level you are in a more of a reactionary situation. What I'm talking about is proactive. And if we can get those schools to identify those young people at each school, then we can develop a peer support group to identify and begin to change their thinking and their behavior. We focus more attention on it be smelling like loud, what young people call marijuana, or if his pants is sagging. I'm focusing on his consciousness. Because if I could change your thinking, your behavior have to change after that. Thinking controls behavior. So that's very important. So those students will be placed in the building life skills in the classroom peer support group, which will meet 3 times a week. We propose that after 12 weeks, the school will see a change in their students' behavior and discipline rates. We also plan to screen and assess students before and after the intervention to evaluate the effectiveness of building life skills in the classroom peer support group. Each session will begin on time and end on time. Sessions are always done in form of chairs in a circle where no one is standing. Every session would have an emotional check-in, and each student check-in will be recorded in a journal, which is designed for the facilitator to gauge the thinking of each student during each session. Now, an emotional check-in is simple. You know, we ask each participant in the circle, tell us one word that best describes you. This exercise is really about critical thinking, Councilman Tolman. This is what Brother Hakim is really trying to plunge here. Show young people that you know, every space they've been into, we always talk about the worst of them. Brother Hakim asked him, tell me one word that best describes you. So then you got to start thinking. If this morning you caught the bus at 6 o'clock, that had nothing to do with your thinking or how you think about yourself. I asked him, tell me one word that best describes you. So the young brother got to think now, wow, no one ever asked me this. And then I asked him from a scale from 1 to 10, brother, how you feeling? And if that young brother tell you he had a 3 or a 4, Brother Hakim will begin to gauge and do a tier 1 intervention, which is a one-on-one after the peer support group to find out why my young brother is at a 3 today. What I can to get you at a 10, to get you to the best version of yourself, because that is the ultimate goal of what I'm setting out in building life skills in the classroom. So every session have an emotional check-in, and that's what I explained. A session is comprised of 1 hour and 30 minutes. All sessions will open with each student giving an account of how their day, week, etc. is going. And that is very important, because a lot of time when we talk to young people, Councilman Thomas, we never ask them, brother, what's going on? What's causing you to have these challenges in your life? See, I can't meet him where he at if I'm telling him what I want him to become. I gotta know where he at. And from that, I begin to find out how can I innovate in his life? Because I'm asking questions. I'm taking a Socratic oath. I'm constantly questioning him. Brother, tell me, what is your home life? It's like, who raising you? What part of the city you grew up in? You know, who is your parents? See if I know somebody in his family, because you got to be a credible messenger. It's all about the influence when you're dealing with young people. So this is the introduction to the internal, external wellness of each student when we ask them how they doing, how the week is going, how they day. Each session would incorporate the core concepts of building life skills in the classroom. Every student will learn the concepts of the model and how to apply to incorporate the model in their lives. Each session will have focus-driven topics. So some week we may talk about young NBA in his situation that he got going on with young Dirk, because this is where they at. I have to meet them where they at to bring them to where we want them to become, or where we want them to be at. And so we have group norms, Councilman Tony, because in every group, we're dealing with young people coming from all parts of the city who have challenges, who may have some beefs going on. So we have to lay the groundwork. So building life skills in the classroom.
Yeah, let's move the presentation to the
Let's move it to the conclusion. Thank you, Councilman.
Yeah. Thank you.
Building life skills in the classroom. Peer support group has established group norms and expectations. The group norms would ensure a safe learning environment for all students, because we got students coming from every aspect of our city. So the first thing we're taught is confidentiality. It is expected that all information shared in the group setting will be kept within the group, unless such information indicates possible harm to the participant or others. This is thoroughly explained to them, Brother Oliver. I explained to them what is confidentiality. And I established that this is different from what you think that is happening in the street. This is different from the G code. Confidentiality ain't got nothing to do with the G code. I explain that to young people. So respect what is shared. All statements should be accepted as information for learning purposes. As such, participants should ensure that opinions and statements shared are constructive for the purpose of meeting the objective of each session and the content of the curriculum. Take turns speaking and sharing. Individuals need to speak one at a time, listening to what is being said, remaining focused on the topic, subject matter, and providing opportunities for others to respond should they disagree with something. No aggression or violence. Physical or verbal aggression and violence is not permitted and should not be tolerated. And that is very important. That is when we lay the groundwork of beginning building life skills in the classroom. I recognized that it was the first thing I had to develop was some ground rules, because I'm dealing with young people who've been in the system, may have beef from the youth study system, may have problems somewhere wherever they from a street, may have some young brothers from across the canal who may not get along with the young brother from off Gale. You may have some young brothers from out New Orleans East, may not see eye to eye with young brothers from uptown living in Melfort, but they go to the same school. So I had to lay this groundwork, and I had to find a way how to become relational with them. And so the proposed outcomes was a change in thinking and behavior. That is the most important thing of building life skills in the classroom. We have to change their thinking and behavior. And another proposed outcome is develop positive social norm in students, because the norms and the behaviors that we see displayed are norms that have been socially accepted by them, but to other ethnic communities, it is abnormal. It is not a proper norm. So we have to change that. We got to develop positive social norm in students. We want to promote employment opportunity for each student. You know, when I begin to do this work, Councilman Thomas, and going in schools, and as well as Thrive, I constantly find out from young people, after we begin to change your thinking, we got to connect you to something meaningful, because we can't have you thinking positive and you're still hungry. We can't have you thinking positive and you still don't have nothing in your pocket. There's no way till you can access any social economic awareness or connect you to anything meaningful, any real wraparound service, and not send them to a program. Resume building is important, but he still have to be connected to some type of employment opportunity. That's important for me. And then teach students how to resolve conflict. I teach that in every session, how to resolve conflict, because we're dealing with young people with a lot of conflict, whether internal or external. Supportive relationship, I connect them with right relationship, meaning that person like you come speak to the group on numerous times, Councilman Thomas, you know, in the past. And that was great to see people outside of their own spheres where they can say, man, this is a relationship I can support. But the first thing inside the peer support group, we try to develop those relationships within themselves so they can recognize a supporting relationship when one is in the midst of them. And then the last one, students can demonstrate how they respond to positive and negative situations. And these are the proposed outcomes that once I begin to be allowed in any school to begin this work of dealing with the highest risk of young people in this city. I don't want to deal with no one who forgot his lunch at home and they sent him to the principal. He don't fit my peer support group. I'm looking for, I style this young person as Benny Black. I'm looking for the young person that everybody has given up on. I want that one. The one that constantly going in and out of the system. That's what I want in the group. So thank you, and I'm open for any question in all, Councilman Thomas. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Kim. Paul, if you could clear the screen, please, and get back to our regular Zoom. Thank you very much for a very holistic and thorough presentation. As always, you know, whenever I chair a committee, it's not to dominate it, it's to facilitate it. So if any of my colleagues have questions first, any points that they want to make in conversation with Mr. Kashif, we can open up the meeting to questions or points or concerns right now. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you for your presentation. I thought it was very impactful and powerful. What are the age ranges of the kids that you expect to participate? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. From 6th grade, 11 years old, all the way to seniors. I want to have no problem going to teach peer support group to kindergartens. But I'm really after Councilman Harris if those young people with behavior challenges. Because if I can go in any school with those individuals at the highest behavior challenges, then we can begin the process of reducing the things that we see happening across New Orleans, because it's starting on the school grounds.
Councilmember Harris, that's a very good point that you just made, because there were some studies done years ago that said while we were worrying about high school dropouts, New Orleans was leading the nation in dropouts after 6th grade. Very
Yes.
important point that you just raised, that we can't just dismiss. Good point. Good question.
Thank you. And I agree. We need to reach to the younger kids and just make sure that they have the support that they need. Do you envision a time for when these support groups would meet? Would it be during the school day or after school? We know that a lot of incidents happen after school hours. And so I just wonder what time you envision this program to happen.
After school, yes, because and also in some instances, it can be during school hours. Yes, I'm open for, but really and truly both of them. We need in school as well as after school. But after school will be more keep them away from, different things. Yes.
Yeah. And then finally, I know you talked about parents and guardians. What level of communication do you envision with the parents of these kids or guardians? I know a lot of people are taken care of by their grandparents or great grandparents, even in New Orleans.
So when my first assessment of facilitating any groups, I always be in contact with parents, because I would like to have a peer support group with parents too. Parents are allowed in the groups. And that's important to me, and I'm thank you for raising that, because I think that this is, we hear all the time. Councilman Thomas used to say, it take a village, and then he would say, but suppose the village is sick. So if we have a sick village, then everybody in the village need to be in the peer support group. And so I would invite parents, and parents have sit in many of my groups and brought other relatives and their family to the groups. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that. It does take a village, and we all need to be supportive of our young people. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Thomas. Councilmember Thomas, you're on mute.
Any other comments or questions from anyone else on the committee?
Hello, Oliver. This is Roland Dusted.
Yeah, Chief Doucette. Absolutely.
Urban Night.
I'm in total support of what the brother Paul was talking about. It's essential that we get to that point. But for me personally, I've always attacked the problem from the front end, which is from grades K through 6. Because I think that if you fix the problem, then you're going to lessen the need for Brother Paul and of course the Silverback Society and all of these groups that are trying to help teenagers. I've always been on the front end, where I think if you attack the problem from the very beginning and don't let these kids break, that's the way you really need to go. And
that's Brother Kashif. That's Brother Kashif, Chief Doucette.
Okay.
Brother Kashif, yeah.
It's just my opinion, and it's something that we've done in the 80s, and we had a tremendous amount of success, because what it did, it involved the parents and the PTA in the schools by over 73%. We saw a 21% increase in GPA of 4th graders. And to me, that's what we really need to be focusing on. But of course, you need people who, like Brother Kashif, who's doing what they're doing, they're dealing with the kids that are problematic now. I want to get on the front end of the problem. I want to make sure that we're lessening the need for Brother Kashif efforts, is what I'm saying.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other points from any other participants? Of course, retired Officer Doucette will have his presentation as item number 5. Any other committee members with questions or points of interest or concerns for Mr. Kashif?
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes, Councilman King.
how you doing? Thank you. I found that presentation to be very, very informative. And what I liked the most about it was the fact that the presenter, and I don't want to say the wrong name, so
Brother Kashif.
Brother Kashif, yes. He made it a point to say that they reached the children on their level. He mentioned young Dirk and young boy NBA. You relate to the children when you say the name of their famous rappers, their popular athletes. That lets the kids know that this is not just somebody who's sitting high looking low. This is somebody who was willing to go on our level to relate to us, and that lets that child, boy or girl, it makes them more open to share their story and their hardships. So I think that's very important. I encourage all of our mentors and teachers to take a moment to see what makes these kids tick and see who the rappers they listen to, because that's a big deal. I want to just say thank you for that. And I found that very interesting. I'm sure as the folks listening have no idea who young Dirk is, they still think kids listen to Lil Wayne and Tupac. So I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. And you know where, Brother Councilman King, that was a research that was done. It was in a book by Dr. Joanna Conjufi out of Chicago. And the book was Countering Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys. But in the book, he highlighted a research that was done by the University of Michigan in 1950s. And they were trying to find out what was the 3 influential forces in a young Black boy's life in America. And they found that at that time, it was home, church, and schools. And so as the study continued on to 2007, they found out it was changed. It was no longer the home, the church, and schools. It became replaced by peers, social media, and lyrics found in rap songs. And so when I found out research and of that, man, that's how I'm moving right now. I'm reaching them on the peer level. I'm hitting them on the social media, on the gram. I'm talking their lingo. And I'm listening to the lyrics found in rap songs, because I got to meet them where they at. When they come to my peer support group, man, I'm going to have 42 dog playing, brother. I'm making them feel good. Oh, we like this group. Oh, brother Akim, man, you playing our song. Yeah, because I got a strategy. If I'm beginning to want to change your thinking, I got to meet you where you at to see where you at. And so you're right, Councilman King. Thank you for that, brother.
Yeah, I have no idea who 42 Young Dog is. I still listen to the Hot Boys and Juvenile.
That's another rapper, 42 Doug.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Councilmember King, thank you. Any other comments, questions, or concerns from any other committee members? If not, first of all, Councilmember King, very good point that you raised. When you're familiar as close to what's happening in the street as Brother Kashif and I, especially in our conversations with these young people, Brother Kashif, what folk don't know is many of the beefs that are still going on today are connected to the young rappers or men that you just mentioned, allegedly, and that they're carrying out some of the incidents that happened there. So if you don't understand that, then there's no way you can prevent or intervene with a lot of the acts that are happening. I want to touch on a couple of things. This morning on the Good Morning Show, Brother Kashif, we had Victor Sims, brother, a renowned behavior specialist who works inside the school system and with families all across this region. He said something that you mentioned earlier about peers. He says, everyone talks about families and parents. He said, but peer influence is the #1 factor amongst young people today by far. It's not even close, but when you get to the next group, parents and then churches and institutions somewhere down the road. Talk to me about people who still think that, or who are still stuck on parental involvement, knowing that it isn't even close, especially since there's no effort to restructure the Black family or restructure family. Talk about the misinformation about the family influence versus what scientists and social scientists like yourself and Victor Sims and other renowned behavior specialists are saying, the major impact is through peers. Brother Kashif.
I think information changed the situation. And so most of the people are misinformed, you know, so the information that they have is still stuck and it's outdated, you know. Imagine someone coming down the street on a horse, people still be looking, wow. And imagine if everybody said we're not going to use cars no more. So it's the same thing like that. It's more as misinformation. And I think that for those who ain't hip to that type of lingo or that research, I should say, well, then look at it like this. I give this analogy that I gave at Tulane to Dr. Schaaf one day, that you can have a young brother catching the bus every day to go to school. And the guy across the street from the bus stop is passing in a hottie, a stolen car, what he don't even know nothing about. And the guy got the music playing loud. And even though this guy come from a two-parent, strong family value home, but the environment that young brother home is in, it makes that young brother at that bus stop, every day he catch the bus and he see this young guy in that car speaking to him, hey man, what's up? And eventually, man, that peer that's in that car either gonna hook him or he gonna catch the bus. And the most time, man, they gonna put something on his mind. Damn, I could have caught a ride. Especially if somebody he know in the car with that guy in that hiding pull up and say, man, what's up, Brian? Let me bring you to school. Most likely Brian gonna get in the car because he don't know nothing about if the car's stolen or not. These are not questions. So peers have a stronger, man, level of approach, man, than parents, man. Environment is stronger than the rhetoric, they call it in science, man. And that's not nothing for us to downplay and put parents down. But I think that for those who don't have that information, man, and you know, it's time for us to have that information so we can change the situation. Because peers are the #1 influential force in a young Black male's life. You know, I talk with this every day. I see this in every peer support group I am in, Councilman Tolman. There's some young brother they identify as the big dog from some hood. And so that big dog got influence on that young person's life because he telling him something that he ain't hearing at home. And that's how powerful peers are. It's the influence. Peers has the influence, not parents.
In Eric Erickson's renowned psychologist and behavior expert, his 8 stages of development, he talks about one of the most critical stages, I don't know if it's 4 or 5, being identity versus role confusion. You touch on what the identity should be versus their confusion about the role that they play in society. Can you touch on that, please?
Yes, because Councilman Tolman, amongst young people, it is better to be popular than to be smart. And there's a book by Dr. Joanna Kunjufi raised that in his book. He said that among young people, it is better for them to be popular. So popularity, pardon me, is everything to a young person instead of being smart. So to get to what you're saying, if you making all A's and you go to school, man, you consider to be a square, but you're really not a square. But for those peers, you can tell, man, you job, man, you going to class. You see what I mean? It's then the little guy who coming to class every day with the nice kicks on, the bandana tied under his neck, under the uniform, or he might have the wristband on, matching tennis. You know, he got the nice headphones, the hoodie over his head. He more popular than the person making all A's. So in that type of identification, that's how they identifying that like that. And that is crazy to us, but we got to look a little more deeper and find out how can we pierce that and correct that and change that social norm, because it's really a norm. And you're right about what psychologists say, because that is the truth, Councilman Thomas.
Two other points before we move to the next presenter. Victor Sims also in his presentation this morning, he talked about institutions, and as important as the family is, as we listen to behavior specialists and experts in child behavior today, they consistently go to their peers as well as institutions. Victor Sims said today that our institutions that deal with young people today are failing them. Do you agree?
Yes. And it started with the schools. And according to that research, they say that the schools no longer existed to being a powerful force in young people's lives. Yes, that is absolutely the truth. Every school in New Orleans, the ones that I have been able to visit, it was more about academics, which is important, but the young people with behavior challenges are not in the classroom, and there's a disconnect between the teacher, in most instances are not from New Orleans, and they are not cultural competent. They don't understand the landmine. They don't understand young people in this city. And we continue to do the same thing over and over again without holding right people accountable who run the schools. And that's because there's no boots on the ground. There's really, if we really look at this, what Victor Sams is really saying is important is because the institutions that are in charge with the development and the growing of young people has thoroughly filled them with evidence of that by what we seeing going on, carjacking, youth violence at an all-time high. And these are young people that goes to different schools. I had a teacher call me last week and say, Kim, are you familiar with the Desalone boys? Man, of course I'm familiar with them. She said, they're all in the KIPP schools. I said, I know, but I can't even get in KIPP. Every time I try to get into school, it's pushed back, it's all type of program. Hold up next week, come back, call me the principal in the meeting. I'm trying to help you reduce behavior problems. And I think that's what Mr. Sams is talking about. And that's what really, in closing, Councilman Tolman, that is a conversation that no one wants to have, because we really don't want to be honest that a charter is just an experiment. And we've been doing a lot of experimenting on young Black boys in the city. And we can't be mad about what we are producing, man. I read an article about pre and post Katrina, the education melting pot. They say pre-Katrina, man, we didn't have all these young people on psychotropic drugs. This is why young men, Councilman Tom met a young guy was mentoring. He had been taking Adderall since he was 5 years old. And then he told me he got off it when he was 15 years old. But when I met him, Councilman Tom, he was already taking trains, Percocet, Tramadol, all type of psychotropic drugs. I asked the young brother, man, he had built his tolerance level like he was really a drug addict. And I had to get help for this young guy. He would be in a pistol grow group slobbing in the side, and I had to find out what was wrong with the young brother. And he had told me, man, it's some pills, man. What pill? What kind of pills? Man, this young brother was on all type of pills. And he told me, man, he had started being hooked on the pills from when he was diagnosed when he was a child. And he said he could go to any school and get trained. And that was like 4 years ago. I could not believe that. So it's a lot of work that I think that teachers have to be taught life skills themselves, OT. Social workers have to be taught life skills. We have professional people, OT, that lead the school on Friday and happy hour. We have professional people pulling up in calls with young NBA playing loud on the school grounds, and other students can see them putting a gun under their car. They're carrying a gun. And they can see them with earrings in their ear, jewelry around their neck. Man, there's no example. So if you trying to change anything, man, you can't look like what you're trying to change. You gotta be the clean glass up against the dirty. And our young people saying the same thing that they'll be coming right on the school grounds. It's crazy, OT, and I'm willing to do whatever I can do, man, and to try to get a program going in schools, because I'm not coming to the council persons today with a hat in my hand. I'm about results. The reward gonna come from the creator. Allow me the space to work with the worst that society says the worst in our city. Set me up in the space and let me go to work.
Brother Kashish, before we close out this segment, of course, the young symbols now that are being held up as part of the problem, rightfully so. We need to do whatever we need to do to make this city safe. People who are hurting people. I've sat down with you and other men who are ex-offenders. I've sat down with you and some of the hardest of the hard, who have said that in many cases, people deserve a timeout. They've earned the right to be put in the system, especially if they're harming people,
Yes.
taking people's lives. But you are also saying, let's not practice this insanity that doesn't balance it with the other work that has to be done on top of police work. Let's not miss out on the opportunity to begin to repair and intervene and do some of that work also. In your closing statements, can you talk about how important it is not to repeat the definition of insanity, which didn't work? If it would have worked, we wouldn't be where we are now. Brother Kashish.
Yes, because OT, every school in the city of New Orleans can identify way before the young person became into before the young person came into any type of youth violence, we saw his behavior diminish on the school grounds. You continue to send him to in-school detention, which is a band-aid. You're not teaching no cognitive behavior therapy techniques. You're not really focusing on his changing of his thinking. You just focusing on if I put him in detention, it's gonna change him. It's not gonna change him. Everything that we saying visibly, clearly in our young people displaying this criminogenic behavior, it started on the school grounds, OT. It could have been prevented a long time ago. All the little beefs they had, we could have set up conflict resolution training grounds. While I could have went in, you and other individuals we trained could go in and resolve the conflicts. We could have stopped a lot of the high schools with all the murder, the young people getting killed, because we would have the right people on the grounds. We would be able to identify, because every school has the data. If I could go to McDonald 35 and talk to Principal Green and say, Principal Green, man, listen, give me a list of the young people at your school that have behavior challenges. He's gonna give me a list. I'm gonna say, out of that list, how many have been adjudicated? Out of this list, I mean, you got with an ankle bracelet on. Well, bam, that's my group. I'm need to target them. That's what I'm after. So if I begin to work at 35 for 6 months, those young people that is 35 begin to change their thinking. Their behavior is not gonna be changed just at 35. Back down to 35, their change gonna be going to be the behavior going to be changed even when they leave the school. So a lot of the opportunities that we have had to work with young people, OT, we have filled them, because we have seen this. If a young person keep getting put out of school, he need to be intervened on. There are 3 levels of interventions according to school-wide positive behavior intervention services. Tier 1 is for your highest risk. You already got the language. Tier 2 is for those that can be in a group. Tier 1, he has to have one-on-one intervention. Tier 3 is those individuals that want to be followers, that's hanging out. So we already know those young people by way of they're not going to class. You can easily see a young person feeling where he at academically. If he challenging reading, if he don't want to come to class, he afraid to raise his hand, then we need to put him in the peer support group. We need to start developing life skills in them. And that's all I'm saying.
Excuse me,
Thank you.
but Brother Oliver, can I ask a question before we go further?
Yeah, Pastor Josh, we can't see you, but I hear you, Pastor Josh.
Yeah, I had to take
Hey,
off.
John,
'Cause I got
Pastor
a-
Josh.
Man, what's going on, Brother Hakeem Kashif? This is Brother Hakeem is a childhood friend of mine.
That's right.
And let me say something. We go so far back to elementary school, but we went to rival
right.
high school, St. Augustine and McDonald 35 Senior High School.
Right.
The thing I've taken impeccable notes, brother. I am very impressed with everything that you presented. And let me be the first to say this: I'm ready for training. Okay, because we come through the Desire projects, and we know
That's right.
we were on. You and I had the peculiar, a unique capability to ride on both sides of the fence. We were the nerds, but we were also able to deal with the brothers who had the handkerchiefs around their necks and had the good shoes on. Let me just say that. But the one thing that I do want to say, and I think that we always need to get both sides of the spectrum when we're going forward. We're talking about the institution of teaching, and we're talking about school and education. But I really believe that the institution of family is what got us here in the first place, and the lack thereof of having that familial base behind these kids that was strong and stringent enough when we came up, that kept us from going too far to the left. The one thing that I've discovered is, I don't care how we want to put this and label this, and I might step on some toes by saying this, but we can't legislate this thing away. Legislature is what I firmly believe has gotten us into the predicament or position that we're in right now, because legislature were the ones who put in laws that said parents couldn't parent the way that they parented when we were coming up. And as a result, when you take away that parent's ability chasten or chastise a child when he was going so far left, then you take away that child's fear of consequences that first come in the home. And once you remove that fear from the home, then now this child becomes a person in his home who is left alone and left to his own devices. And a child left to his devices, according to the scripture, says that he will bring his mother to shame. And so with all that said, I believe everything that you presented, brother, is a pivotal part in getting and helping us to regain control and put us in a position to where we can help our youth become the hope of our tomorrow and not be what we are seeing in society as the means by which our society is falling, and people are afraid of our 11, 12, and 13-year-olds. And I never thought I would live long enough to see this day or be able to say that. But say it again, Brother Oliver.
No, I say thank you. Great point.
You know, I mean, but now that we are here, and this is a reality in our existence, the first thing, as you say, brother Hakeem, I'm not gonna go with the childhood names that we know each other by. But you know, now that this is in place, as you say, we need boots on the ground. We need people who are not afraid of what it is that we're dealing with, who understand the severity of the moment, and even are willing to take the necessary risks to see to it that those in the future have a better opportunity. Because coming up, many sacrifice so that we could be sitting on a Zoom call right now talking about the problems that are plaguing the society that we live in. And I'm willing, listen, I'm living in the lanyard of my life. I firmly believe that everything from here is just icing on the cake. The cake has been prepared, and my situation, my eternity is in its proper place. So I'm good with that. My question is this. We all better agree with the fact that this is more than behavioral. This is more than what we've been exposed to. This is more than what they've been taught. This is more than what we're listening to. This is a spiritual fight. And if we don't agree with that, then I'm telling you, we will be doing exactly what it is that you said a moment ago, Oliver, when you said that practicing lunacy. You know, doing the same thing, expecting different results. Because when it's all said and done, we've tried everything. They have implemented everything else you can think of. The laws have become more stringent. The punishment for certain offenses have gotten to the place where we can put you in jail for life for this. But until they see people who they can look eye to eye, face to face, and say that, and hear those people, first and foremost, let them know, listen, I'm not afraid of you. Because I heard someone in a position of authority and power say that these children are like soulless dogs. And I say, listen, they have a soul. They even have a spirit. If you want to equate them to dogs, I would only use it in this capacity. If a dog knows when you are afraid or you aren't. And when you're fearful, a dog will attack. But when the dog sees that there's no fear in you, that dog will whimper and ask you to rub it on his head. And I know, I'm not saying what I think. I'm saying what I practice on a daily basis, going into our communities, going into the midst of drug deals, going on the scene where crime, where murder has taken place, and talking to our people and letting them know, listen to me. And I'm not just talking about our people, I'm talking about our at-risk people in our society that are causing our communities to be viewed in the way that they're being viewed from outside of our great city. Letting them know, listen, I care, I'm here to help. And as you say, Brother Hakeem, I will attack this and deal with this from a holistic perspective. I'm here for you 24/7. Here's my number. Call me whatever time. My phone rings loud enough to wake me out of a dead sleep. And I don't care what it takes for me to get there. I will get there. Brother Hakeem, I'm not, you know, I can learn real fast. You know that about me. And I don't have the degrees. I don't even have the educational background in this field, but I've had 30 years of operating in ministry where the responsibility for the ministry that God has given me is to go back into our community and tell our people that, listen, there is hope from whatever situation that you're in. You can not only recover from whatever it is that you face, but you can rebound in such a way to whereas you will propel over the people who never had to face what you faced in the first place. And that specifically is embodied in you, Brother Hakeem, because I know the genius that God has placed in you, and I'm grateful that you went through everything you went through so that you could arrive at this point where you are, because you have a specific responsibility of redeeming what we consider to be the lost aspect or element of our society.
Thank you,
Yes,
Pastor
sir.
John.
And whatever I can do to support you in this endeavor, know that you have my full support, and you have access to all the resources that I have access to. And trust me, brother, they are limitless. You know, so let's go forward. Let's do what it is
Yes,
that
sir.
you're going to do. But understand this: if we're not attacking this from a spiritual perspective, then we're going to fail. I don't care what type of glorious plans that we can come up with, because until we evict the spirit that we in the city of New Orleans has allowed to come and take residence, and y'all know how hard it is to serve eviction notices. Until we attack that element, then we're going to just keep on putting band-aids on a gunshot wound. So
Pastor
that's
Jock Williams, our next presenter. Thank you, Pastor Jock. Brother Kim, how can people come to visit you and your peer support group at Thrive, and any contact information for you for any of the council members or any people on this Zoom?
Yes, I could be reached at 504-333-4754, and the address of Thrive is 3600 Desire Parkway. And I will be hosting the next Building Life Skills in the Workplace for Thrive will be in another week. And I'll give you the dates, Councilman Tom, as well as I'm gonna have some Culver students gonna start coming over to the peer support group, because I'm gonna develop one for school-wide students right at the center in 3600 Desire Parkway.
Thank you. We look forward to hearing from you again in the future, man. We appreciate it. Thank you, Brother Kashif. Thank you very much.
Councilman.
Councilman
Next-
Thomas,
Yes.
this
Yes.
is Councilman Green.
Oh,
And I just
yes,
wanted to identify,
Councilman Green.
I just want to identify that I have to call in because I'm just having some technical problems, but I did want you to know that I was on the line.
Yes.
I appreciate our presenters. I'm going to ask our host if I tried to say something earlier and I was muted. If there's some way to identify my number as 287-3832 and not mute me, I'd appreciate it. But I'm muting myself, and thank you very much, presenters. I just wanted to let you and my fellow council members know that I was on the line for the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you. The technical difficulties are real, council member.
Yeah.
And we've been really challenged, and I'll be glad when we get back to in-person meetings. But whatever is happening here at City Hall, the IT and the heating definitely has to be improved. No doubt about it, man. Thank you so much, Brother Kim. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Thomas.
God bless you, young man. Next, item number 4, Crossing Jordan Christian Fellowship. Our presenter, who we just heard from, is Pastor Jock Williams, and Ray Avenue Baptist Church presenter and Pastor Robert Brown. The discussion is how faith-based communities can assist in reducing crime. We cannot have a discussion about crime and just the criminal justice system without having a discussion about all those other important components of the community. What Brother Kim talked about, peer support groups, the school system, how important it is. And then the faith-based community is bigger than just going there asking them for votes during election time. It's about how we can engage our pastors and our churches in the spiritual movement and the social movement that Pastor Jock talked about, and how will you begin to work with them to make a difference so that we don't have to have these waves of crime that are not new to our city. We've been the murder capital in 4 or 5 different areas. And like I said, the first time we had a criminal justice committee meeting, is that this isn't new. I have no doubt we will suppress crime, but what will we do on the other track to make sure that we don't have more victims of crime because we just suppressed it? We didn't begin to deal with it in a holistic way so that we could minimize its impact on our community. Pastor Jock, in your presentation, how can faith-based help in this fight against crime.
Well, I know first and foremost, I listened intently, as I said, to Brother Hakim's presentation, and he talked about how the pendulum swung from being family, church, and school in the 1950s to being how did he say it? He said peers, uh, the uh, the social media, and music. And I think that has become that way simply because, to be honest with you, the church dropped the ball many years ago. The church went from being that intimate and that intricate part of our society that was intricately involved and interested in every aspect of not just their members, but the society or the community that they were in, and just became uh, a popularity contest. And that's a pastor being as honest as I can tell you, pertaining to what I observed over the years. Now we Pastor George Green, House of Healing, Pastor Kenny Davis, Lower Light, Pastor Brown, Ray Avenue, Pastor Gregory Baptiste, Behold the Lamb Ministries. We have formulated a group called GKB, Global Kingdom Business, and what it is about. It is really about the church getting back into position in our society like it was before. The problem is, and this is the a problem that still I can honestly tell you I have no answer to. The problem is nobody wants to risk it all. Uh, that is that is sad and perplexing to me, to say the least. But I have approached many of our faith-based leaders. Of course, I won't say any names because I will never do that. But they're only willing to go so far. And as I said in my conversation with Brother Hakeem, I'm willing to go all the way for this until we, as faith based, are willing to implement what it is that we're preaching and that we're saying and that we say we believe in. Then honestly, Brother Oliver, I don't think that we will be able to. And I know that may not be what you want to hear, but it's as honest as I can come across, and as transparent as I can be. I don't think that we will be able to uh, play a great part in our society because, as the studies show, as research has proven, we have lost our savor. And you're asking somebody asking something.
No, yeah, 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 if you could raise your volume a little bit, we can't see you, but we can hear you. But if you could raise your volume a little bit, that would help.
Okay, hold on a second. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, it's better.
Okay. Yeah, I think that the only way that we can truly help is to come and be a part of uh, organisms or organizations like what Brother Hakeem's talking about, is to come and get the pulse of our communities again, to become actively involved in going out and meeting the people, being boots on the ground, shaking hands, just like our elected officials do, and let them know that we are not only uh, in the community so that we can just preach on Sundays and raise collections, but whatever it is that the church has to offer, we will be willing to give for the betterment of the very community and society that we live in. But even more so, I think that it's important because even though the church has lost is a lot of its luster, we still get a lot of phone calls pertaining to a lot of the crime and a lot of the things that are going on. And although they may be afraid to talk to the police, they're not afraid to talk to the clergy, because there's three different type of pastors in our society. There is a pastor, there is the pastor, and there is my pastor. A pastor is just someone who the community knows is pastoring a specific church. The pastor is the pastor of the church that I find myself visiting or attending today. But my pastor, My pastor is the one who who the people have chosen to be the one to give them the necessary nutrients for bread from the word of God that can help them excel in life by simply not only hearing but applying. And all of the my pastors get all the dirt that's pertaining to our community because the people trust their pastor, and so they tell us all that we need to know. The problem is there's not a connection between the pastors and the police department, or the pastor and several of our elected officials. Because if the connection and the trust was there, then we can take the information that's given to us and give it to you all, and we can virtually weed out all the bad grass that's in our community. But I don't like using bad grass because I'm listening to what Brother Hakeem is saying, and if we take a proactive approach towards what it is that we're doing, then we won't even have to wait until we get to that point. So I think the clergy can really help in several different capacities. But one, I think that the people in our communities need to know that our clergy not only approve of, but we support the other components of our society that help make a difference in our society and that makes the laws and enforce the laws.
Pastor Jock, thank you for that presentation on the involvement of the church. Pastor, you and Pastor Brown also have any community walk event on the 19th?
Yes, it's on February the 19th, and it's going to be at Ray Avenue Baptist Church. We're going to start there, and we're going to walk in the community and interact with the people and get the pulse of the people to find out what it is that we can do as a church, as the church, to help the community, the people in the community, to feel safer and feel better about the community that they live in. But it's also designed, and we'll be sending out invitations to our elected officials and our police department so that they can come also, because again, the objective is to show the community that we have a great strong partnership. I don't know if you all remember, but it was about a year or so ago. We put on an event at the New Franklin Avenue Baptist Church, and we had elected officials, we had the police department, and we had over 160 clergy that got together. And in that meeting, the clergy was asking, what is it that we can do to further garner support from our police department and to get more activism from our elected officials? So although some of us in clergy, we have access to uh, most of you who are elected, but there are others of us who are numbered amongst us who say that they've never been able to reach anybody at any time, including police in certain times. So the objective again is to become synergetic, to become unified, to present one front, a unified body, and to let the people know that we're together, but to let also the criminal element know that we're together. And although we want to help you get better, if you choose to remain on the opposite side of the spectrum or opposite side of the fence, we'll do whatever it takes to get you out of our society so that we can create a better and more safer society in our communities.
Thank you, thank you. Look, before we, well, first of all, are there any members of the committee that have questions or issues they want to raise, or just comments with Pastor John Williams? And any comments from members of the committee? I don't see any hands raised or any comments from the committee. So Pastor John, you mentioned something earlier. You said that, I think you highlighted the difficulty of the church's involvement, or that it will be more difficult for the church to be involved. But does the church have a role when we talk about reducing crime, especially with juvenile crime, and in our communities? Does the church, even though the church may not be playing the role you think it can play, does it have a role?
It does. It has a specific role, but it still comes down to, at the end of the day, having access, as Brother Hakeem said, having access to the kids. And the church's access was never had to come through elected official or police. It always came through the homes. And so when the parents become disconnected from the kids, uh, because when we were young, let's just be real about it. When we were young, we didn't have a choice whether or not we wanted to go to church. We were going to church on Sundays because mama was going to, and you didn't just go to church for the message. You went to church for Sunday school. You went to church for Sunday morning Bible study. You went to early morning service, and you went to the evening service. So being that the parents were parenting and not giving the children a choice, then those pastors had greater access and had developed relationships with those kids in that community. Nowadays, the parents come to church, but the children don't. And so when you ask the parents about the children or you try to get access to the children, the only time we really gain access is when the child is in trouble and they want to tap into us to see what type of favor we can get so that the child can possibly get out of jail. If we can call a judge, call a lawyer, call an elected official. So we do have a role to play, but the breakage again goes back to the first institution, because really the second institution, the second greatest institution that God created was the church. The first institution he created and the greatest was the family, and everything. And the church's foundation is built on the family. So when we don't have access to the kids, we can't do what it is that we know to do. But that all comes from it. Again, it all is that trickle down effect. And we have a greater role. We want to play a greater role, but we don't have access to the particulars to fulfill the role or the responsibility that has been given us as an assignment from the creator.
So let's stick with roles. And once again, is there any other comments or questions for Pastor Doc Williams from the committee or anyone on the call? Well, once again, we're talking about the role. Then what role does government or governmental institutions and agencies, what role do they play in combination with the church, or we play a role together in attacking this issue called crime? Not just so that we're attacking it in the moment because people are afraid, but so that we can have some sustainable long-term success. How do you see that relationship and those roles working so that it plays out long-term?
Well, I can use a model that I know of that's taking place in Houston, Texas. A dear friend of mine, Pastor Joseph Hargrove. What he has done, because what I just said plagues all the communities we find ourselves, our churches being placed in. But what he has done, he has partnered with the judges of the court system, and he's gone to the court system that as it pertains to recidivism, right? Not just recidivism, but helping the child to keep from becoming a part of the revolving door of the criminal courts or the criminal justice system. He has gone to the judges and the mayor in that city that he lives in, and the judges, and they have agreed that what a child can do to avoid a certain sentence, to avoid facing certain penalties, is if when he, instead of going to jail or serving time or even being put on probation, he goes through a program that the church has devised. And the program that for the church requires that he gives certain hours around the church, that he does certain things, but also he has to, for a whole year, report to church every Sunday. And every Sunday he gets signed into church. At the end of the year, his sentence is fit. Now he's still home. He's still able to go to work and have fun and do whatever it is he needs to do, but he has to be in church on Sunday. And at the end of the year, the pastor signs off on the court order, and that child is free from any other responsibility that he has. But what Pastor Hargrove has discovered, that as he's coming over the years, the pastor now has the distinct responsibility of not only teaching the truth that can change his life, but being the living embodiment of that truth And so that this person can see not only is pastor just saying this, but pastor is intricately involved, and pastor believes to the point where he invests all of who he is in me. Also, he spends 4 hours a week, I think, at the church doing whatever. So he reports specifically to the pastor. So the relationship that they develop over the course of those 365 days is so strong that over the years, when the year is up, these people become lifelong committed citizens or members of the church, and their whole attitude changes simply because they got exposed to the truth. They saw this person who lived according to the truth, who showed love and compassion and concern, and the relationship that they developed on a personal level changed this person's mindset, ultimately changed his outcome, and produced a better person for the society that he lived in.
Thank you, Pastor Jock. Any other comments from committee members on this particular item number 4, discussion on how faith-based communities can assist in reducing crime? Councilmember Green?
I just have a simple question. I would like to ask, what is the time of the event, the walk on the 19th?
It starts at 9 o'clock on the 19th at Ray Avenue Baptist Church.
Okay, thank you. I certainly will share that information. I appreciate it. And
the
thank you for your
address,
presentation.
Thank you, Councilmember Green. Pastor Jock Williams of Crossing Jordan Christian Fellowship, on behalf of Pastor Robert Brown and other pastors at Ray Avenue Baptist Church. Pastor Jock, if you can close now, please.
Well, in closing, I just want to implore us all to always take this serious. I've lived in New Orleans long enough to see where we went from the murder capital of the United States to whereas the numbers were reduced in such grand fashion that the whole nation was looking to New Orleans for the model that we implemented in the 1990s when Chief Pennington was the chief, and all he simply did was put the police presence in the places where we knew that the crime was concentrated by putting state substations in the Desire, the Melpomene, the Iberville, the St. Thomas, the Magnolia. The people it not only curtailed crime because nobody commits crime in the open if the police department if law enforcement is there, but what he also required was that law enforcement develop relationships within those communities. As a result of that, we saw that model work, and that model worked for years, and we received all type of presidential accommodations and everything else to this city. I know for a fact that we will come up with a solution that will bring these numbers down, and it will bring everything back into subjection so that this city can remain what it is, what it once will become, what it once was. The thing is the most important thing that I've learned in life is that the worst thing you can do is get so caught up in a great victory that you drop your guards. Whatever it is that we're going to implement as a result of these conversations that we're having, we have to remain firmly committed to it throughout the remaining years that we will have an opportunity to serve in the capacity or the positions that we're serving in. Because if we just do it to reduce the numbers and then we see results and lower our goals or become lackadaisical or content, we will see it become worse than it ever was before. So I thank you all for the opportunity to be a part of this. I am extremely excited about what it is to come. I'm leaping within my inner man at what our brother Hakeem presented, and I just know that when it's all said and done, if we take the time to commit time to what it is that can be the solution, we will come up with a solution. Let's just not get lackadaisical after we see the tide of the battle turn.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Jock Williams. We appreciate you. And thank Pastor Brown and the other members of this committee who are going to be working with you so that faith-based communities can get back, not only back to their rightful place, but do the outreach in communities to help us with some sustainable, I'll say it again, some sustainable methods to deal with crime over the long haul. Thank you, Pastor Chuck Williams. Item number five, and he's been with us since the beginning. Our presenter, Ronald Doucette, one of the leaders in community policing, one of the leaders in our neighborhoods and how do you organize neighborhoods, is going to be talking to us on neighborhood involvement and the role in assisting and reducing crime. What role do everyday citizens play? Should we just rely on the city council? Should we just rely on the mayor? Should we just rely on law enforcement? Do citizens have a real role in helping us with not only reducing crime, but intervening so that crime doesn't happen? Roland Doucette, Mr. Doucette.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Thomas. Thanks for that introduction. Listening to Brother Akeem and listening to the pastor, they touched on some key issues. Number one, in terms of getting these kids early, at the teenage level, that's something that I really didn't focus on as much as I focused on kids K through 6, because I believe that if you get to these kids on the early end, and when they leave the 6th grade, in fact, I sat on the steering committee for security for the Orleans Parish schools, my cousin Ronald Doucette, in the 80s. And one of the things that came out of that meeting was that if kids read, write, and perform at the 6th grade level, leaving the 6th grade level, chances of them going on to higher learning was up something like about 83%. And that's always stuck with me. There's two things that has to happen in any community that's having a problem with crime. Number one, you have to be able to build the trust for the people that live in that community, that they can tell you what their problems are and you won't get them hurt. The second thing that they got to be comfortable with is that once they tell you what's going on in the neighborhood, you're going to make that problem go away. Whatever you need to do to make it go away, you're going to make it go away. That's always been, for me, if you study criminal justice, it always tells you that more than 90% of any communities are good people. So my concern has always been, okay, how do I get that 90 plus, help me eradicate the problem of that less than 10%? And it's always worked for me, because you have to build trust. You can't just walk in the neighborhood waving at people and saying hello. Those are not the people you got to put on your team. You got to get the people who are committing crimes. You have to get the people that are doing things that are not in the best interest of society. But the main thing is, people have to understand that whatever officer is not going to be all police. Let's get that straight. It's not going to be all police officers. Some police officers don't want to intervene. Don't want to intervene with the community. They want to just go after the bad guys. And I understand that. I get that. But you have to have some officers in each district that understand that you have to be able to use the community to its fullest to extract the information you need to get the bad people out that neighborhood.
Ronald Doucette, any questions for Ronald Doucette from members of the committee or folk on this Zoom?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that, Oliver? I missed that.
No, I was asking if we had any questions from our my colleagues on the committee, and we do. Councilmember Freddie King for Roland Doucette. Councilmember King, we can't hear you.
Got it. Don't we already have community policing with different officers in every district, that their sole job is to be a community liaison between the police and the neighborhood?
I don't know if we do or we don't. I can honestly tell you this, Mr. King. If you did and they were effective, you wouldn't be talking about a third of the problem that we're talking about now.
Well,
that I can promise you.
The quality of life officer, is that not their role?
It depends upon the training they received. I mean, there's some people who they look at quality of life officers, that is, they got some junk cars in the neighborhood, they got some tires being dumped in the neighborhood. They use those officers for things like that. What I'm talking about is something that in the 80s, when I worked in the Lafitte housing development, Brian Gumble used to have the Today Show. And Brian did a live broadcast out of that housing development during the Christmas holidays. Those people, together with myself, we made that most pristine place to live in that whole area. I mean, people would be driving down Orleans Avenue. They would turn around and come into the development just to see why those lights were so bright in that driveway. And as a result of that, President George H.W. Bush, his office called, I think Sidney Bartholomew was the mayor, and asked to find out, well, why is this happening? Who is this guy? They called me into the office, and my own mayor didn't know what I was doing, and I work for them. It really depends upon how you're training people. And a lot of times, the guys that's on the street every day, they never get asked how to fix problems. They never get asked.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Roland Doucette, retired police officer, community liaison. Any other comments from anyone else on the committee?
Yes, this is Councilman Green, and I would like to thank Officer Doucette. I would like to thank Officer Doucette, Mr. Chairman, for his work, especially in the past relative to community policing. I do think that there's a little bit of a challenge these days. Lafitte, there was such a concentration, for example, of population, and now the whole point of eliminating those developments was to reduce the density. I hope that there can be some private funding, for example, for an increased policing model, if you will. I just see it to be a challenge today, Officer Doucette, because of the number or the people power shortage that we have in the police department. We're talking 400 officers short, and the fact that the density has been reduced in certain areas. Do you have any ideas as to how community policing could work now, and what sort of numbers we would need to have to be able to do an effective job of community policing?
Thank you, Councilman Green, and congratulations on your election. You bring out some interesting points. Number one, Councilwoman Peggy Rosa was the council person when I was working in Lafitte, and she challenged me that, that Lafitte development had a lot of people who had been living in that development for years, and it's not as bad as the Iberville. And she challenged me to go into Iberville and see if I could do the same thing. We did. We reduced crime in Lafitte by 92%, went to the Iberville, reduced crime in Iberville by 94%. I do agree that there's a very serious shortage of police officers. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But right now, being what it is, it's not how many police, it's how you police. We have got to be more effective with what we have. And I'm not trying to be critical to our current leadership. I know Superintendent Ferguson. He's a good man. He's a very good man. But sometimes there's some people who can bring something to the table to help you, and they never get the opportunity to do that. Training is quintessential to what I'm talking about. I do believe in, and I want to make everybody very, very aware of one particular thing this morning. They don't take away anything else I say. Take away this. Because of the virus that we've been experiencing over the past 2 years, and what has happened to our kids in a lower level education, I'm talking about K through 6. In the next 5 years, if you think we're talking about problems now, hold your hat, because it's going to get much, much worse. Because the bottom line is we've got to get on the front end of this problem with these kids in school. And that means I've always believed that if you're going to be effective at helping people, you have to have them on board. Everything we've ever put together always mandated that parents have to be involved. We didn't give them options. Not one. Every parent had to be involved, or we cut the kid from the program. And this is education to kids K through 6. I'm a firm believer in that. I understand Brother Hakeem and what he was talking about with kids, that teenagers, that's the problem, kids. I understand what he's trying to do, and that needs to happen. But I'm telling you that if we don't get on the front end of this problem from K through 6, and the way I was talking about doing is the way we did it in the 80s, where we got the parents of some of these kids that when their parents came out of jail, we looked for ways. I'm not interested so much in getting teenagers jobs. I'm interested in getting their parents proper paying jobs that they could take care of their own family, get that man back into the home. That's the focus that has to be done. We can't keep trying to give one kid a job in a family that kid may do well in that particular job. But what's going to happen to his siblings, his or her siblings? And we keep missing the boat. The other thing is I want to challenge our elected officials. Get together and put your heads together and find ways that you can go into these schools. I'm talking about the mid school level, like 7 through 12 through high school level, and have a frank dialogue about the political ramifications that's going to be involved in their lives. Frank discussions. I'm not talking about sugarcoating anything, but frank discussions about what the political arena is for them. We know what's happening at the national level, but they don't know what's happening at the local level. And all politics are local. So, I mean, there's a myriad of things that can be done, should be done, isn't being done. And at my age, I don't have a lot of time, to be honest with you. And I understand that. But I'm willing to do whatever I can. And I know that we can start to reduce this crime problem we've got. I know we can. But doing what we're doing now, no chance.
Thank you. Councilmember Green. Thank you, Roland Doucette. I think that's what Councilmember Green.
No, he answered my question. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Roland Doucette. I think that's the importance
Thank you,
of, the great playwright August Wilson talks about two trains running, the dualities of life, just doing one thing and not forgetting about the other thing that has to happen at the same time. And I think this criminal justice committee meeting dedicated itself to Brother Kashif, Pastor Jock Williams, and how can we get the churches more involved in your presentation, because you just predicted, and well, first of all, you said this isn't new. We've been here before. We'll probably suppress crime again, but how many lives do we save on the way to the next wave if we don't begin to deal with it? And I think we forget that too often, that if we react out of fear and emotion right now, we won't do the things that are sustainable to coordinate the system, to get the churches involved, to get the experts involved, and to get the community involved. I want to ask you about Neighborhood Watch. Is that a time gone by? Is Neighborhood Watch still effective? Or are these just different times now where neighbors don't want to stick their head out the door or the door pop through the window? Is it just a different time now?
It is a different time, Oliver, but I'm going to share something with you that I found during my career. One of the safest neighborhoods that I found in the entire city of New Orleans while I was working in the 30 years that I was on the job was the area near Esplanade and Creek Street, Dupree, all up in that area. Mm-hmm. Whenever somebody walked into that neighborhood that they didn't know, we would get anywhere from 6 to 12 calls from people in the neighborhood telling you point by point what the person had on, where they were going, with whose house they were in front of, where they were, just everything about that person, whether we're in a car or not, the whole 9 yards. That can come back. But again, when you got people marching on the mayor's office demanding more participation, I say you got to throw everybody in the mix. And what I'm not hearing in the discussions from this morning and really before this your intervention, since you got to be council person, is that we're leaving out I think you got to put everybody in the mix, including the Nation of Islam. And I know that's going to be a sour note for some people, but you know what? When you see a black man that's dressed with a bow tie, clean cut, I used to use, when I say use, I mean that in a good sense. When I was working in Iberville, Wicker School was right there on Bienville Street. I had a policy at 7 a.m. The prostitutes, the drug dealers, the would-be robbers, any of those people, they knew at 7 o'clock, they had to clear out of that area because my kids were going to school in the morning. And I wanted them to have the same opportunities that my kids, my personal children, had to go to that school without having to deal with that. And I asked the assistant from the Nation of Islam. And I'm going to tell you what I saw on a personal level. When a woman's holding her child's hand, I'm talking about in the 1st or 2nd grade, walking that child to school, and they get to see a black man that treats them with respect, talk to them with respect, you could see the kid's expression like, well, wait a minute. I didn't even talk to my mama that way. I never heard nobody talk to a man talk to my mama that way. It has an impact. All of that combined, Oliver, has an impact on how we fix this crime problem. All this other stuff, this fluff stuff we're talking about, when you're talking about we go out there, we're going to be tough on crime. What does that mean? I don't understand what that means, because nobody can give you a definitive answer how to do that. I can tell you honestly, if you want to bring down crime, there are ways and things that we can do that you can put on a 6-month interval. Where am I starting at? Where am I in 6 months? And if it doesn't work, do something else. But to do the same thing, and you said it before, do the same thing over and over again, it's ludicrous. It really is. It's insanity. It's a complete definition. Oliver, and I'm going to say this and I'm going to get off. You give us the best opportunity. And I'm not saying that just because I'm talking to you, because I've said this to people repeatedly, and I make no bones about it. I did support you. And the reason I support you, I go back to when you were on the council before and how you impact people's lives on the council. And then when you got on that radio, what you've done to impact people's lives, people listen to you. If we have a major uprising with the police department, for, let's say, for instance, a bad shooting, who can we turn to in this city that can quiet this city down if we ever have a major uprising? And I think you're one of the persons that can do that. And I'm not saying that to blow the smoke, bro. I'm just telling you how I feel.
Well, we have some great people on the council. Well, one of the things I've tried to do is always be respectful of people, respectful of their committees, respectful of their turf, respectful of their politics. I was raised like that. My emotions and my needs are always second. Often my father used to say, as a leader, you put your personal feelings second, you put people first. Sometimes when you talk about respect, sometimes the greatest disrespect in this community comes from our politics and how we treat each other, how we ignore each other, how we run over each other. And I tell people, if people in the suites can put their guns down, their ambition down, their personal feelings down, then it would be easier for the people in the streets to know that they don't have to gang fight and they can put their emotions aside too. But I'm fortunate enough to have some great colleagues, man. I think this is potentially the greatest council we ever had. I want to be a student of each of the people who are here and learn from them. I think they've already made a difference with me. And I think you see this council with the urgency from our Vice President, J.P. Morrell, our Council President, Helena Moreno, Harris and Green and Jeruso and King. I'm just glad to be part of a group that respects me enough to allow us to participate and have our differences, but also work for people to be safe and know that we need you, like we need Brother Hakim, like we need the pastors. For any pastors who are listening or who will watch this committee, and I'll say it again, we will suppress crime again. But we've been the murder capital in 4 or 5 different eras. New Orleans was 6 times more violent than most cities its size during the good old days. Will we use this effort to make sustainable, long-standing success and create a more peaceful environment in our community, or will it just be an effort to suppress crime? And for those who watched the committee earlier, I talked about peacekeepers, the Nation of Islam, the Islamic community, and the other mosques that were involved. And the fact that even though it was successful, there were people in the political community and the religious community who were afraid to be associated. And in many cases, that had an impact on a successful effort. I think too often being politically correct and worrying about our individual politics sometimes even trumps success. If you can stand on my back or stand on my head and make yourself look good and help this community, I'm all for it. But at some point, we need to have a collective effort so that we're not just sustaining crime, we're not holding up kids as the example of what went wrong, but that we're honoring kids as the example of what went right, not just in our lifetime, but for lifetimes to come. Mr. Doucette, if you want to close out, any comments before we end this committee meeting, and I'll ask for a vote to adjourn. Mr. Doucette.
Well, thank you, Councilman. Number one, I don't want to come across, and maybe I said that wrong to disrespect any of the councilmen colleagues,
No.
but I've worked with you in the past, and the only person that I know personally on the council is Mr. Green. In fact, his dad was one of my best friends. I do know of J.P. Morrell through his family, but other than that, I don't really know him personally. But I do know you personally, and I do know Mr. Green personally. And I didn't mean any disrespect to anybody. And I mean it from the bottom of my heart.
Well,
but I can tell you have to do better. I'm sorry.
Well, the one thing about
Okay.
this group is we don't have people on this group with big egos. Their mission is just to help.
Can't afford it, Oliver.
Absolutely.
You can't afford it.
We need everybody. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Look forward to the next time because we're going to keep picking your brain.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Motion for adjournment.
I'll move. This is Harris.
Moved by Councilmember Harris. Second by Councilmember Green. Thank you guys so much. And we look forward to the next Criminal Justice Committee meeting where we'll have more law enforcement agencies.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, presenters.
No, thank you, Mr. VP, man. Appreciate you guys more than you know. God bless y'all. Everybody have a good day. Thank you. And
Thank
you,
you.
Paul.